Happy Poetry Month to all of you. And I do believe that poetry is eternal. And there is a poem in everywhere. And there is a poem in every heart and life. So let us today look at list poem. And then we can also examine some of the sample list poems and try to figure out how a list poem can be made. A list poem, as the name says, is a well-thought list that can be of an inventory of people, places, things, or thoughts, but put it in a special way. And there is a connection between these list of items, list of things, a list of images. And finally, it tells a story or paints a picture or provides a strong emotion or feeling. And most of the times, the title says what the poem is about, what the list is about. And generally, it has a theme. So the items you put together or the emotions you create together kind of illuminate a strong theme, giving an impact or effect as a whole on the reader. In coming to the history of the list poem, so it's not a new concept or it's not a new form. It's been there for a long time. And when you look at, you can see list poems in many books of the Bible as well. And there are list poems available in Greek mythology and Greek literature. Looking at Homer's Iliad, it's a kind of partial list poem that reads the list of Trojan warriors. And the two classic examples from famous poet Walt Whitman, The Song of Myself, and I Hear America Singing, are classic examples of list poems. So basically, it's been there for a while. And what is the form of the list poem? It's a simple form. It can become complex depending on the list of items or the list of things you are talking about, or your poem talking about. It can make a turn and leave a very heavy impact with the vivid images or important events you are using. And it can be like repetition of a phrase or a word at the beginning of several lines or stanzas. And this poem can be a list of a complete list, or it can have an introduction or a statement in the beginning and list in the middle, and then a conclusion or ending part. And there is no need to like use a rhythm or rhyme in a list poem. It can be like a free verse. I mean, why do we use list poetry? What is the use of list poetry? A list poem can be the very beginning way of introducing poetry to an audience or readers. It's a simple form of poetry to start for the beginners. And if used in a perfect way, you can surprisingly create a list poem with images and emotions. And then simple list can not be made into a poem. You need to have some element or some spirit in it too. If the poem is just a list, it can get boring or it may not have the quality of a poem. As a poem, this list should discover something, provide you a strong emotion, or create a clear picture with the items of the list you're using. describing the list or introducing the list should have an impact. It should have a desired effect, and it should address a certain element or an emotion. Okay. So the best way of understanding list poem is to look at some of the sample poem. I have this poem called S by William Stafford. It could happen anytime. Tornado, earthquake, Armageddon, it could happen. Or sunshine, love, salvation. It could, that's why we take and look out. No guarantees in this life. But some bonuses like morning, like right now, like noon, like evening. So when we look at this poem, this is simply not a list. It has something more than a list can offer. So the poem is talking about something which can happen at any time and how there are no guarantees in this life. And also talking about the bonuses we get, like morning, like right now, like noon, like evening, like this moment where we are having this conversation and talking about poem or poetry. So, anyone has any thoughts on how this poem looks at?
Looks like there's a couple questions there in the chat. Catherine is just asking what the Stafford poem was again. If you could just maybe repeat that.
Oh, let me go back there. Yeah.
So it's called Yes.
Yeah, the poem is called Yes, and it's written by William Stafford. You can either Google it for the poem or you can just look in here. I'm not able to see the questions though for some reason.
Oh, that's okay. So there's another question: is a list straight down? So I guess it's about how you would actually frame it visually on the screen. Would you write your list straight down?
Okay. This is actually I'm just introducing this poem because it is one of the simplest list poems, and it will give you an understanding of how simple a list poem can be. And then we will look at some more list poems, a little more complex, and then I have some examples. Oh, sorry.
Great, please continue.
Okay, so coming back to this question, we are also looking at one other poem which is talking about the several fears the poet has, or it's like eternal, as we can see this kind of the emotions and the feelings and the fears everyone experiences in life at one point or at the other. So as I said, this is the most, I can say this is the most simple poem to look at it. And going back to the next poem, which is called, let us go to, okay, so the next poem is, let me just give you the link in here as well. It's called, okay, it's called The Fear by Raymond Carver. Okay, so this is the poem Fear. We will, I want you all to read this poem and then we can go back to the things we are discussing about this poem are like look at the poem in an analytical way. So can I request any one of you to like read this out for any volunteers to read this out?
I'll read it.
Thank you.
Fear. Fear of seeing a police car pull into the drive. Fear of falling asleep at night. Fear of not falling asleep. Fear of the past rising up. Fear of the present taking flight. Fear of the telephone that rings in the dead of night. Fear of electrical storms. Fear of the cleaning woman who has a spot on her cheek. Fear of dogs I've been told won't bite. Fear of anxiety. Fear of having to identify the body of a dead friend. Fear of running out of money. Fear of having too much, though people will not believe this. Fear of psychological profiles. Where are we? Just missing the rest of the poem.
Can you bring the poem back onto your screen, Padmaja?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. Okay, fear of psychological profiles. Fear of being late and fear of arriving before anyone else. Fear of my children's handwriting on envelopes. Fear they'll die before I do and I'll feel guilty. Fear of having to live with my mother in her old age and mine. Fear of confusion. Fear this day will end on an unhappy note. Fear of waking up to find you gone. Fear of not loving and fear of not loving enough. Fear that what I love will prove lethal to those I love. Fear of death. Fear of living too long. Fear of death. I've said that.
Thank you. So this poem goes into depths of how life carries so many fears. It's not just one, many fears. And then you can see that there are multiple point of views. Like we can see the parents' point of view when it says fear of my children's handwriting on envelopes. Fear they will die before I do and I will feel guilty. And then we can also see the adult child's point of view. Fear of having to live with my mother in her old age and mine. And you can also see the point of view of a person who is in love, who is loving somebody so much and fearing that not loving enough. And also fear that what I love will prove lethal to those I love. So this is a kind of complex list poem. Even though it talks about just fears, it has a multitude of emotions and experiences. And as I say, the concluding part is a twist. It has much more effect on the reader as he's repeating one thing twice and he's saying that he has already said, the fear of death. Okay, and when we look at this poem, we think, why does the poet choose the list of things in the order that he did? Is there any intention, or is he like trying to set up a sequence to give us an impact or an interesting message in listing things in the order that he did? And then what is the importance of word choice? Why does he pick those words specifically? What does the choice of the words mean? And is there a rhythm he's trying to establish by making the poem flow in such a way? And what is the twist at the ending. What exactly he means by saying, I have said it, and what is the implication of repeating one fear twice. So this is how we kind of look at this poem. And I want you to look at this poem and then see whether you can at least connect with 3 of the fears he listed in the poem. Can I have some volunteers who can do that for me, please? Any of you has like any reconnection with the fears he has listed in the poem?
I guess I connected with the fear of, I can't find it right now, but the idea of taking care of, the parent, but also being similar in age at that time, close in age and trying to look after yourself. So I didn't write that one down, but that one resonated with me.
Thank you.
Three fears in there. Well, there's more than three that resonated with me were fear of anxiety, fear of not falling asleep or not sleeping, and fear of not loving enough.
Thank you, Don.
I kind of went with universal themes of loss, connection or intimacy, and success.
Thank you.
Mine was fear of being late and fear of arriving too soon. Like that literally explains my anxiety in getting to spaces.
Fantastic.
I thought fear of running out of money and also fear of having too much, though no one would ever believe that. I thought they were quite good and I hadn't heard them said before.
I connected with fear of the telephone that rings in the dead of night, because it's often the death of somebody you love. It's always a catastrophe. So yeah.
That's so true, because I live in here and my family lives in India. So anytime getting a phone call, at the odd hours is always a fear, because it's obviously going to be some bad news coming from distant place. Like it could be about anybody in the family. So that is one of the fears I have in common with our poet. Thank you for sharing that.
Could you just put the poem back on the screen for a second, just so people can have a quick review?
What resonated for me was the part where he had the fear of his children dying before him and feeling guilty about it.
Okay.
Partly because my mom went through that with my brother.
Sorry, let me just take.
I felt that the fear went across the whole arc of life, so that there was fear of electrical storms as a child would be. And then, when you have children yourself, your fear that something will happen to them, and then fear that you're going to be alone and have to look after your mother, and then fear of death. And it just seemed to go the whole arc.
Yeah.
All the fears are the same. The fear of life, the fear of living, the fear of endings, just a total distrust in life just flows through it. All these fears are distrust in life. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other, which has eternal connection, is the fear of the past rising up. It's like human tendency to go back and, think about the things which happened in the past, especially the ones which are not very sweet, which are not really great moments. We go back and, relive those moments, even though, they are like in the past, maybe 10 years or 20 years, but we still relive. We try to control that, but we have the fear of going back and reliving our past, which is fear of the past rising up. Okay. I do have a few more sample poems. I haven't listed them here in the sense. I just wanted to give the poem name and then write the poet's name and then what they are trying to say. What kind of dominating element is existing in that poem. So for example, Praise the Rain by Joy Harjo. It has a careful sequencing which enhances the poem. So the sequencing part is key in this poem. I gave the link here and then I'm going to share that in the chart after let me just do this now. And the other poem, which is kind of very complex, the complexity is reflected so well in this poem, which is called Thanks by W.S. Merwin. And again, there is another poem, The Car by Raymond Carver, the same poet who wrote The Fear. It has a repetition which shows the importance of the object. A bit of humor is also there in that poem. And as I said in my previous slide, I Hear America Singing, which is by Walt Whitman. It has a unique feeling of unity in diversity. He lists like different individuals doing the same act of singing, but the diversity and the unity in diversity is achieved by doing that. And we can look at two of the poems among this list. One is called Goodbye, Goodbye by Eugenie. So the interesting thing about this poem is it starts with figurative language, also uses similes and metaphors and a bit of surrealism, which make the poem more interesting. And there is this other poem called Display of Kitchen Utensils. This starts with nouns we see in the kitchen, and then the poet starts talking about the verbs, those acts which are done by using these utensils. So there is a connection. So first she's listing the nouns, which are the kitchen items, and then the verbs, which are the things we do with our kitchen utensils. And Nothing Wants to Suffer by Danusha Lambaris. It has like surprising turns from animation to the inanimation, and then the few lines are kind of interesting and surprising. And the idea of suffering is displayed in a newer, brighter way. So I listed these poems so that like when you get some time, you can, go back to these poems, look at them, try to like reread and try to like figure out what exactly these list poems are talking about and why they are interesting or impacting, or why are they called as good poems or good examples. Okay, so this is the poem I talk about. I Hear America Singing. It's by Walt Whitman, I said. I hear America singing the varied carols I hear. Those of mechanics, each one singing his as it should be blithe and strong. The carpenter singing his as he measures his plank of beam. The mason singing his as he makes ready for work or leave of work. The boatman singing what belongs to him in his boat. The deckhand singing on the steamboat deck. The shoemaker singing as he sits on his bench, the hatter singing as he stands. The woodcutter song, the ploughboys on his way in the morning, or at noon, intermission, or at sundown. The delicious singing of the mother, or of the young wife at work, or of the girl sewing or washing. Each singing what belongs to him or her and to none else. The day what belongs to the day, at night, the party of young fellows, robust, friendly. Singing with open mouths their strong melodious songs. So as we can see, he is listing a number of people who are singing and also simultaneously doing something else. And this is a poem with just 11 lines, but it paints a picture of multiple people doing multiple tasks at the same time singing their own songs. So with this, I just have like the below steps to create a list poem. You can pick a topic you care a lot about. You can pick anything like your favorite things, your favorite colors, the things you have done last week. Choose a title that invites readers into your poem. If you have an introduction, you can write 1 or 2 sentences of introduction to set the scene, and then go to the list. Create a thoughtful list that reveals something about your title. So the list should have connection with your title. And when you make a list, think how uniquely you can create the list and then how you can make it come together. If needed, revise the wording of your list items to make them more vivid or memorable. And you can end the poem with a line that surprises the reader with a twist to the list. So we can just do a short exercise here. Maybe you can aim at like 10, 15 lines, and then write something which is a list and which has a connection with each of those. So before that, I can just give you like, think about like making a list of 12 to 25 lines. And then when you're choosing the words, make sure that you're choosing a correct word carefully, and make sure that your ending has a twist and there is a overall pace to the poem that allows the poem to flow when it is read aloud. So it's 1:36 now. We can just take like 10 to 15 minutes and write down something which is a list about 12 to 25 lines and with a title to connect to the list. Okay.
All right, so we'll take 10 minutes, and then you can pick up whenever you're ready.
Okay. Has anyone ready with their work? Lana, can you please read it out for us?
Sure. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So here it goes. In my satchel. In my satchel, you will find a pen to record my day. In my satchel, you will find the notebook to guide the way. In my satchel, you will find my memories of yesteryears. In my satchel, you will find the list of all my fears. I couldn't resist including that. In my satchel, you will find the colors of my soul. In my satchel, you will find the prayer I say each day. In my satchel, you will find the map that guides my way. In my satchel, you will find the song I wrote for thee. In my satchel, you will find a bit of memory. In my satchel, you will find the treasures of my soul. If you can find the satchel, it's worth more than gold. And that's the twist. I'm not sure if that is exactly what you meant, but I just played with it because,
Yes, I mean, that's how it should be, yes. Awesome, Lana.
Thank you so much for the privilege.
Thank you so much. I'm really proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. I love this style. I find myself writing the repetition often because it creates that impact of the message you want to send or the tone the mood you want to create. So I find myself using the repetition, but not like this. This is new one. This is a new way, and I really like it.
Thank you. Dawn, you can read now if you are ready, please.
Yes, thank you. So I tried to keep my list items simple, but I hope meaningful. So I've called it Much Ado About To Do. My income tax deadline, my payment due deadline, power bill, credit card, other credit card, my quarterly report deadline, my writing competition deadlines, the end of April, the end of May, the end of June, my best before date, my expiry date, my last deadline.
Thank you, Don. Really, really good. It's very pragmatic as well. Thank you. Larissa?
Oh, thank you.
Can you also please share what it was?
So mine is called What I Learned from My Cat.
Wow,
I
interesting.
learned curious, sticking my nose into a bathtub of bubbles and delight in sneezing, to pause and give chase, to give up to be keen about sound, to nap and be restless, to curl against a warm body, stare out the window at the trilling birds, to long for them and not have words for it, to snore and yowl when the mood strikes me, to greet every time the person at the door, to sleep unapologetically and purr, to be without concern for productivity, but rather for food, kinship, and another warm place to curl into.
Wonderful. That's amazing. Anyone else has anything?
I could try mine.
Thank you.
I call it tamales. Production line set to go, tasks doled out to cousins, aunts. Mama Lupe, the momentary manager, spreading masa across corn husks, sister pulling pork. Mama Lupe saying, less masa. Cousins rolling corn husks. Hot water boiling, stones ready. Mama Lupe offering stones to Canadians to take home. Tamales steaming for supper. Embracing heritage for a weekend.
Very nice. That's impressive with the repetition of the sound. Yum. Anyone has?
Okay, can I go?
Yes, please.
Okay. Mine is entitled They All Saw. They all saw him led to the gallows. They all saw the missing button on his trouser snap from the terror inside his body. They all saw the falcon lift from its crest to get a better view. They all saw his tears well up into a cloud refusing to rain. They all saw his lips tremble with the tense torment of borrowed time. They all saw his daughter play at his feet, thinking it all a midday theater. They all saw the two men with masks and could smell the smite from underneath their brow. They all saw his wife beg as he himself had done every day outside the churchyard. They all saw the three words leave his body. They all saw how much emphasis he placed on the word love. They all saw the bones of his spine snap, and they all saw the rope snap and death denied to declare him dead. Thank you.
Thank you. It's really amazing. Wow.
Okay, I think we maybe have time for one more, or if you wanted to say any sort of concluding words, either way. And I posted in the chat, but I'll say it here as well. If anyone wants to share their poem in the chat, that would be lovely as well.
As I said in my chart, there is this book which is complete list poems. It's called Falling Down the Page, and it's written by Georgia Herards. So it's a very good book for beginners who want to try, their hand at list poetry. And as I said, I'm going to share the sample poems I listed in the presentation in the chart so that you can, look at them, review them, and try to get something out of it, or maybe try, writing down. And me and a friend of mine are thinking of bringing up a collection, a collection of list poems. So I will share that announcement probably sometime in June or so. Then you can also try submitting and see.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that. It's a very
Thank you
interesting
so much
form.
for this wonderful opportunity, Marianne and others. Thank you so much.